everybody, welcome back. It's your girl Toya T. I know I've been MIA for a couple of days. I think I didn't make any videos last week, and it's already Thursday, and I'm now making my first video for the week. But I thought that I've been really busy, and I thought that today would be a good day to do it. I'm back in my car driving to work, but yesterday was a great day for those who I think have listened to me over the last couple months or year. I have said that I am a graduate student, I'm a PhD student in a sociology program, and I've been trying to finish up for the last 3 years, and finally it has happened. Finally, I have set a dissertation defense date for this month, and I'm so excited. And I wanted to make a video to kind of talk about that for anyone who's a graduate student, or so medical student, business school student, master's student, PhD students, particularly for the PhD students. You'd fully understand my excitement at finally getting a defense date, especially after being in my program for a very long-ass time. I went into graduate school straight out of college, because I fully believed that I wanted to be a tenure track professor at some university. And for the most part, graduate school wasn't necessarily exactly the way that I thought it was going to be. I don't think I even thought about what the experience was going to be like when I applied for graduate school. I was in two fellowship programs in undergrad. I was in the Mellon. I'm still a Mellon fellow, Mellon Mays undergraduate fellow, and a McNair fellow. McNair, I don't even know what the full Ronald E. McNair Fellows Program, I think that's what it is, or undergraduate fellowship program, something like that. But I was in two programs in undergrad that was focused on helping minorities, so anybody who was a first-generation college student or a person of color, to get into graduate school. And for other people in both of those programs, I was the only person that applied and went directly into graduate school. So I felt kind of pressured to do it because I was the only one that was planning to do so. So I feel like the directors of those programs, not trying to throw any blame at them, but I felt like there was some kind of obligation to them because they needed to have the numbers. At least one of these people is fulfilling our purpose. And it was fine. And I will fully admit that my first year of graduate school was horrible. It was probably one of the darkest times, next to my last years of graduate school of my life. It was a very hard transition going from a college student to living on campus to living on my own with my dear friend Karen as a roommate in the Bronx, and going to a graduate program in New York City that truthfully did not, out of due certain circumstances, did not give me, I think, the full funding that I was supposed to get. And for most people who know, once you go to PhD programs, most of them cover your entire tuition and give you a stipend so that you go in without having to take out any loans or anything. But I was not in that situation. I was in a city school that happened to have the best, still happens to have the best immigration scholars program in the country, I would say, or maybe even in the world, because they have quite a few noted immigration scholars. And I was very much interested, and still am, in the study of immigrants and their experience in the United States, especially since both my parents are immigrants, and I am a child of immigrants, and I'm a second-generation immigrant and first-generation American. So I was, program-wise and research-wise, I was definitely in the right place, but I feel like I probably needed a lot more guidance and support in that first year. So the first semester was fine. I was able to get through it and still navigate being a graduate student. And there was a lot of other factors I had to deal with the fact that I was the only black person in my cohort of 30 students that came into my PhD program. I was the only black person, and I think I was one of the few that actually came straight from it might have been just me and someone else. I'm not sure if he went straight through or if he took a year off, but I definitely was the youngest person in my program, in my cohort, because I came straight out of college, and probably one of the few that came straight from undergrad. So there was a lot of things that kind of made me feel separate from everyone else, and kind of isolated, because I felt like everyone else knew more than me because they were older and they were working, and I was still like this young kid still trying to figure out living on my own and having to pay rent for the first time, and how to do all those things. So the first semester was okay. By the time the winter hits, and I know for most people that happens to them, they, I'm definitely someone who gets seasonal depression, because I definitely do like the sun. I was a summer baby. I was born in the summer, born in the light, grew up in the light. And when it gets cold, especially when you live in the Northeast and it gets really cold and you can stay inside and there's less sun, it gets kind of hard for me. So my second semester was not as great as the first semester, and I actually really contemplated dropping out because I was just so miserable. Plus, on top of that, I lived so far from all of my friends, a good portion of my friends, because no one lived in the Bronx. I lived all the way in the Northeast Bronx, and most of my friends lived in Manhattan or Brooklyn that lived in New York City, except for a few of them. And it just felt kind of really isolated when your friends wouldn't, it's really hard for them to come visit you and for you to go hang out with them. And if you live in New York City, Manhattan is pretty much where most of the action is. Having to go to Manhattan took about an hour. And it was really hard having to do that traveling. And if you live in the Bronx, you understand that on the weekends and at nights, that 5 train don't run the way it's supposed to. Like, you have to wait and get off at a shuttle and take it to the very end. And I lived at almost the very, very end of the 5 train. And so that didn't help. And my roommate worked as a paralegal, so her hours were really crazy too. So we pretty much only saw each other on weekends. And sometimes, she'd come in late and I'd, already be there for a while and just be pretty lonely. So it was a really lonely experience. But luckily I was able to get through it through the help of some other professors there that realized that when I was struggling and really acting like I didn't want to be in the program, took me aside and asked to actually talk to me about what was going on and help me get through that first semester. So I really appreciated having that experience. And by then I also started to make some friends in the program, because I'm not a very friendly person. I am definitely someone who cherishes their friendships, and I'm extremely loyal to the people that I call my friends, but I do not. I'm very shy. I'm a mixture of two things. I can be very outgoing, but usually in situations where I am comfortable, and when I am in new situations, I'm not very open to putting myself out there. So I'm not the person that would go and be in a room full of people that I don't know and introduce myself. It would take a lot of courage and time for me to actually do that. So it did take me a good full year to be able to make my first friend. Shout out to Ricardo. I really do appreciate you, because once I actually made that first friend, it made things a lot easier. But luckily I got through the first year. The second year, during that summer, my roommate and I moved to Brooklyn, so I was now closer to the school, in an area where there was a lot more of my friends from college and other people that were around my age, and a lot closer to some of the action. And I just absolutely loved where we lived in Brooklyn. We lived in Clinton Hill in a nice brownstone, renovated, and it just completely changed the entire experience for me. And I came into my second year completely refreshed and ready to really do this. And I was lucky enough that I happened to find myself in a class that I almost dropped, and thank God I did not. I ended up in this class called Black Education, which I don't remember the full title, but I know it was about Black education, and it was in the psychology program in the department, and I was a psychology major in college, so it wasn't it was not out of my realm to be there, and I felt very comfortable. But it turned out the class was absolutely awesome. It wasn't completely, it was like more on the social psych way, and the professor, Dr. Bill Cross, was absolutely amazing. I think he was the first professor I'd ever gone to their class, and he welcomed every single student in there. And from there, I had really, realized this is why I came to graduate school, to have this kind of experience and to be able to become a professor just like Dr. Bill Cross, where I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about African American history, about the education system, and some of the other issues that have really hot topics that had come right around the time that Bill Cosby had made that comment at the 50th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education, about how, it seems like black youth today aren't interested in education, and they just, making up names for their children and wearing baggy clothes and more concerned about Jordans and education. And it was interesting to use that as a starting point, and then to go backwards and actually look at the history of education of African Americans from slavery. And I won't go too much into that, but he was just the class was absolutely amazing. It was a turning point. I took some other classes that I really felt that when I was in them, I felt like I made a contribution, and I actually started to feel smart again. I was like, ooh, my brain is working again. It's starting to fire, and I can see that I do actually belong here. I also made some really great friends with some of the upper, I don't want to say upperclassmen, but some students that are further along in the program that gave me great advice about how to prepare for the comprehensive exams that we had to take to get through the first level of graduate school. And with their help and their guidance, I actually passed on the first try both of my my required exams. So it was very helpful, and shout out to Tamara and Aaron for being such great people, because they really helped me figure that out. And Danielle, I can't forget Danielle, my special friend. All these people really helped me figure out, like, what do I want my experience to be like. Really having to have a hard conversation with myself about, it's not about what other people are doing or what you think you're supposed to be doing based on other people's experience. It's about your own. If you're someone who needs to have a social life, to be happy, and then maybe you shouldn't be taking 4 classes if you don't have to. You don't have to stack it on. 3 classes is fine, and if that is enough to meet the requirements for the semester and allows you to have enough time to be able to, on weekends, go out with your friends and actually have an enjoyable young life, because I was not, unlike some of the people there that were in their later 20s or early 30s or had kids or were married. Like, I was still a 22-year-old, still trying, like, living in New York City and trying to enjoy that while, so it was great that from there I was able to make decisions that made sense for me. And from that point, graduate school was so much better. And I definitely really appreciate those people that it really helped me have that turning point during my second year of graduate school that propelled me through the rest of it. Now, going back to when it shifted. So I went through and I did my dissertation research, and I went out in the field and started writing things up. And that's when things started to make a nasty turn. I came back home to finish writing my dissertation. I lived in Atlanta for a year to do research. I had a great dissertation fellowship at UC Santa Barbara in the Black Studies Department. Shout out to them. That was absolutely eye-opening and gave me a chance to live in California, Southern California. And I'd never thought that I would ever want to live in California, and I'm happy that I did have that experience to have on my belt. But when I came back, and which I never, ever, 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 ever wanted to move back into my mama's house. I love my mama, but it was for various reasons that, anytime like you have 2 women in the house together, they will bump heads. And me and my mother definitely bumped heads a lot when I used to live at home as a high schooler, and I couldn't imagine it coming back as someone who's in their, in their late 20s, having to live with my mother when I absolutely had no desire to do so. And so it was interesting. And also on top of that, my committee members had various ideas about what they were expecting from my dissertation, and I myself was having kind of issues of how to write it and what to put in there and how to actually get the story that I wanted to put across into words. So it was a hard transition. I think most people who are in PhD programs understand, that the writing process itself is even though people think that you're not doing anything, is very taxing. It's very taxing to have to go down and sit with yourself and write out all of your research and get it across. But at the same time, you have these other voices besides the one in your own head, which is usually the loudest, your inner critic. But you also have these committee members that you also have to pacify when you're writing. So you're having all these voices and you have to decide, which ones do you want to listen to and which ones can you just, accept and then just put it in the back burner and say, maybe I'll address this later on, but whatever. So I spent 3 years during writing up my dissertation, and I actually really did finish it last year. I finished it. It was edited by an editor, and then I hit a wall with my committee that I will not talk about, but maybe if you want me to talk about it, I will. I hit a wall that really set me into a really dark spiral, and it's really interesting to me now that the same time last year, I was extremely unhappy. I was depressed. I was just absolutely not in a great state of mind, and I just did not see... I didn't see a future for myself, which happens with depression, but also happens when you are just unhappy. And I just couldn't figure out what it is about me or the situation I was in that was making me so unhappy. And luckily, my advisor, shout out to Vilda, was very understanding and was able just to deal with me, like really see me as a person and not just as a graduate student that was working underneath her, but as a person that has real emotions and feelings and that has a life outside of this, academia, this dissertation. And she really gave me some great advice about, if you need to talk to somebody, like, you should go talk to somebody. If you need to go into therapy, like, it's not uncommon for academics to go into therapy to kind of talk out some of these issues, because anything that causes a block in you will block your work, and it's just going to spiral out of control. And that was really great advice for me, that she was, open enough to tell me that it's not, it might seem like a deep, dark secret, but it's not uncommon for people, to have to seek help. And if it means talking to a friend or talking to a therapist, talking to your doctor or a family member or your priest or whoever you have to talk to, that it's okay to admit that you feel inadequate or you feel like you can't do something. And I was in that situation, and I was happy that she really pushed me to go and seek help. And I actually eventually also had a conversation with my mom about some of my issues, because my main thing was, which I gained from actually getting help and talking to someone, is that I have one of my biggest fears is failure. I have a huge issue with thinking that I'm failing people. So the main thing that was blocking me was the fact that I had gone through all this schooling, and I felt that if I was not happy with it or didn't finish it, for whatever reason, that, my mother and the rest of my family would be very disappointed, and I'd be looked at as a failure. And I felt like a failure because I had not finished in the time frame that I had set for myself. So, actually having a talk with my mother where she really expressed that, it's that she's my mother first and not some kind of, taskmaster or critic. And if this is making me unhappy and if I want to quit this program now, that I can go ahead and do that. But it's much better than me doing it, thinking that I owe anybody anything and being unhappy and unhealthy. It's better that if you want to quit or do something else, it's better that you do that and be happy and not sitting here absolutely miserable and, pretty much dying inside. So that was a great turning point for me. I also had a great turning point when I had a conversation with one of my little cousins at Easter. Shout out to Mohana. Shout out to everybody today. And realized that maybe I don't want to teach. I do love working with students. I've always liked working with young people, even when I was a young person. I was always a mentor in some kind of mentoring program. I was mentoring other students on going through the college process, going through high school, all these other things. And I realized that the thing I like about teaching is actually getting a chance to work with other young scholars and young people and helping them learn something and, move on in life and get to the places that they want to get to, using my own life experience. And, maybe, the pressures of being a tenure track professor is not exactly the best for me, but maybe I might want to go into something on the more administrative side, either academic advising or college advising or admission. So once I realized that, it really opened up things and I felt so much better. I felt clearer. Applying for jobs worked out a lot better for me, even though I didn't quite get a new job yet. I was still in a good position because right now I do have a guaranteed job for the year, and it's not like that's not bad. I still get to work with students, but then also I have a game plan now, and I'm in a mind space that is clear and happy and healthy, that I can go out there and really put my best foot forward and move on to the next chapter of my life. So the main thing of this was I was just trying to give, my own experiences about, the benefits of getting help and the benefits of, not being afraid to make a major change. Not even help at all. To not be afraid to make a major change, even if you're in your 30s, that it's not too late. If you're unhappy and it's just gonna keep going. If you feel like you can just, truck your way through it, and in a year later you're still upset, it's not healthy for you, and maybe you should find out what the source is and move on. And I am just a living example of that. I'm so happy. I now have a defense day. I will be Dr. Latoya Tavernier by the end of this month, because I will be. And it's just crazy for me thinking that all of a year ago I was probably at one of the lowest points in my 31 years of life, and to turn around a year later and be in such a great space. I might be tired, I might be busy, but I'm doing the things that I want to do. I'm happy and I'm healthy, and I'm doing things that I feel that make my life really worth living. And I suggest that for anyone else. And I hope that anyone that's in that kind of situation gets something from it. If you know someone who's in that kind of situation, please feel free to share it with them. Like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to have a conversation with people. I know this was super freaking long, but I felt like I had to put my story out there, and especially if it could help someone else. And from the conversations that I've had with other graduate students, it seems like they're in the same space, and I just want to let them know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a light, even though I probably won't sleep for the rest of this month until I get to my defense and have them say, "Congratulations, Dr. Latoya Tavernier." And I pop that bottle of Moet. Oh my God, it's going to be awesome. The bottle that I've been holding on for a whole entire year. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I probably will make another video about this when I get after my defense, probably tears streaming down my face and all that stuff with my family there. But you will see it, and I would love to just have a conversation about this. But anyway, everyone have a great day. Have a great time. I know this was long. And thank you for just sticking with me, and I will see you guys later. Bye.